Well, welcome to Warwick Castle. We're on a bit of an emergency setup with the speakers because ours went swimming the other day, so do apologise if the sound is not up to par, but we're going to hopefully get it up and running for the show at 2:30. But welcome anyway to Warwick Castle. My name is David, and between myself and John, we're going to fly 4 birds for you. And if you look in that direction, you will see the first of the 4. She's absolutely beautiful, and I know for a fact lots of you guys might even recognise what type of bird she is. There she is. Now this bird, her name is Miss Moneypenny. And Miss Moneypenny is our 1.5-year-old snowy owl. So pretty much all of you will probably know or recognise this type of bird, won't you? As they were made very popular by that very, popular series of films called Harry Potter. Because he did have a snowy owl. However, you recognise him through the films, but sadly it was sort of the demise of this amazing species because lots of people saw one on TV, they therefore wanted their very own Hedwig. So unfortunately, there was a population boom in owls. But yeah, they're not very good pets. They can be quite nasty and scratchy and bitey. So yes, sadly, they're known for the wrong sort of reasons, aren't they, really? But they are fabulous, beautiful birds. And Penny is no exception. The reason she's called Miss Moneypenny is because on her left leg, she's wearing an identification ring. And the last 3 digits are 007. There you go, but I just call her Penny because it's a bit less of a mouthful, isn't it, really? They're not native birds to the UK. You find them up in, like, the Arctic Circle, like North America, Canada, Alaska, right across Northern Europe, even maybe as far over as Russia. So, yes, not a bird you'll find living wild here as a native species. But they do migrate around their natural range in the wild. But saying that 2 of them got lost, I mean they got really lost. Because in 2013, we had a wild snowy owl. He was visiting Devon. And in 2019, we had one visiting the Outer Hebrides. So these were indeed wild birds that had just somehow managed to get lost by a fair few hundred miles. The one that was up in the Outer Hebrides, that was featured quite heavily on Winter Watch. You know, the brilliant series where they cover all about British wildlife, and they filmed it and photographed it loads, surviving mainly on dead things. But snowy owls, in general, they're a big, powerful owl. They're one of the world's largest, but they don't have that title. That title goes to the Blakiston's fish owl. They are huge by comparison. Well, Penny has a wingspan of about 4 feet across. And wingspan, children, is the measurement from wingtip right across the bird's back to the other wingtip. So it's about 4 feet. And she's weighing in at about 3 pounds and 8 ounces. Whereas a Blakiston's fish owl has a wingspan of over 6 feet, and they can weigh up to about 4 kilos. They genuinely are a huge, very, very powerful owl indeed. But snowy owls, in terms of flying, they're very good flyers, but we tend to keep Penny's job quite simple. See, where they live out in the wild is the Arctic plains. They're a ground nesting species too, so they don't really do much in trees. They're generally spending a huge amount of their time down at ground level. So when you don't have many trees or tall perches to sit on, well, then you really do have to sort of rely on your flying skills. So although Penny's job is simple, her capabilities in flight are much, much more. A couple of times she has displayed quite nothing personal, just a bit of fertilizer. On a few occasions, she has displayed her normal flight, and I'll explain. So what we're doing at the moment is myself and John, we're just exercising her from myself up to John on the tower. But one day she took off this perch here and she just used all of this space in front of her, and she went right out towards the trebuchet. She did a huge circle, come right back over the boathouse, But once she got really high up, she didn't know how to come down again. So she kept going up over these trees, those trees, then she got to the mound, and that's where the wind really caught her. She did another 2 circles, she went that way, and we found her in Stratford-upon-Avon. So you were not encouraging Penny to go just a little bit too high, because yes, the reality is that once she gets a bit higher, she's like, oh, I don't know what to do now, I'll just keep flying. So yeah, she was literally sat in the field just outside Stratford, sat there, big white blob, going, where is Warwick Castle? So yeah, she was quite easy to locate, being such a standout sort of bird. Now you watch this glide Penny does all the way down this hill. This is how a snowy owl will sort of directly attack a prey item. You see, although they're big, powerful birds, they don't really catch huge prey items. But look at the glide as she comes in. You guys will get a great view. Look at that. Hugging the floor, concealing herself and her size. Her favourite sort of prey item in the wild is actually a little rodent about similar size to a guinea pig. It's called a lemming. And there's loads of them everywhere. There's tens of thousands of them. And the snowy owls, they don't just, they thrive on them, survive on them. They're pretty much the staple diet for all of their young owlets. Because it's a big bird, it sticks out and they get into such a fast, powerful glide. You can't really see the snowy owl's feet all too well, because it looks like she's wearing feathery slippers. But of course, when you live on the snow, you're going to want to be well insulated. But you will see her great big powerful talons poking out of the ends of those feathers, and she'll snatch the lemming up with pinpoint accuracy. More often than not, if they're hungry, they just swallow them whole, or they take them back to the nest area where they save them. And they actually they have the largest clutch size of any sort of bird. They can have up to 12 eggs in one clutch. Imagine 12 little mouths to feed. So they actually store all the lemmings around the nest. Because it's so cold, they don't decompose. So if the chicks get hungry, they're like, well, just have a little lemming, shall we? Quite amazing, I think. Brilliant birds. As she goes over to John, give her a really big round of applause. Bizarrely, we have to be waiting for her to leave before you clap. Because if she stands there and you clap, it scares the heck out of her. Whereas if you do it as she's flying, it's no longer a concern. But on to the next bird, and I'm going to go and get him from out of this box just over here. We'll fly a falcon now. This is, of course, temporary. It doesn't live in here. Hello, my friend. Hello. Come on then, let's have you. Here he is. This is Rocket Ron. And Rocket Ron is a lanner falcon. So, in terms of falcons, most of you will know of the more familiar peregrine falcon. It's one of the world's more commonest species, and you can find them on pretty much every continent. But the lanner falcon, this is an African species. Quite a common bird as well, can be found throughout most parts of Africa. One of my all-time favourites to fly as well. And Ronnie's a lovely bird, and as I walk alongside you guys, you'll notice maybe one thing about him. He's a bit two-tone in colour. You might not know this, but the brown feathers, they're his baby feathers. They're the first set of feathers he ever grew. But the blue ones, they're his adult feathers. So it usually takes about 3 years for them to become fully mature. So you can see the colour contrast between the two of them, can't you? So he really is going to be a strikingly beautiful bird, but lanner falcons are indeed very beautiful. This is actually a bird that will have been found in medieval times also, because you were given a bird of prey according to your social status. So this is a bird you would have seen at Warwick Castle all those many years ago. But I'll talk a little bit more about that later. As you can see, Ronnie is showcasing his beautiful wings. He's brilliant at this. He's ever so photogenic. And you'll see that he's got long, pointy wings. Lanners have got quite a long tail. In terms of size, you know, against the peregrine falcon, they've got longer wings, a slightly longer tail, but they've got broader wings. The peregrine is the ultimate diving machine. They're the fastest animal on the planet. We don't use peregrines because more often than not, they're in a different county. chasing pigeons, whereas the Lanner falcon, it's a much more sort of a docile individual, but they're no slouch at all. You'll see he's got something on his tail also. This is his GPS transmitter. This records everything that Ronnie does, how high he is, exactly where he is, and speed recorded as well. And yesterday he was pretty good. I try not to talk about how good he is or how good he's going to be, because if I say he's going to be brilliant, then he'll be rubbish. That's how it works. But the other day, in a dive, we recorded him at 110 miles per hour, which is quite impressive, considering he weighs 1 pound and 4 ounces. But the peregrine falcon, they've beaten all the records. A female peregrine falcon, which is considerably heavier than the male, has been recorded at 242 miles per hour, making them the fastest animal on the planet. And now I've had a little walk around you all, you're probably thinking, what on earth has that bird got on its head? It's not a crash helmet, it's called a hood. And you traditionally hood a falcon. You can hood most birds really, apart from vultures and owls, and it just keeps them calm. The other falcon will fly later, Simon. It doesn't work on him. He would be frantically flapping his wings by now, but Ronnie just prefers to hold his open, which is quite nice really, because you get to see the shape of a falcon. But I'm going to take the hood off now and we'll let him have a fly around. As I say, I don't know what he's going to do. Sometimes we rely on his training and he does something quite spectacular. But I'll take the hood off. And then you can see you all. And you can see his big old googly eyes. He's watching those jackdaws. So we may do two things. Here's one. That's called rousing. And there he goes. So we obviously didn't want to do the other one, which is a poo. It's quite comical, but it's up to him. And there he goes, off into the abyss, never to be seen again. Now, I can't take a huge amount of credit for this bird's training. My work colleague spent more time with him. He's called Stuart. And Stuart trained him in a similar sort of fashion as to how you would train other falcons. To showcase their speed, you would train them to fly really, really high, and then you would get them to dive in at high speed. So as you can see, Ronnie's sort of ripping around at tree height, but he is gaining height, but he's just trying to assess which way the wind is blowing from. So it's nice just to see a falcon on the wing, isn't it? And generally, if we leave him, he just flies off and we never see him again. But he's now going down the river, he's turning back, and he's basically, the wind is awful today. If you look at the flag on St. Mary's Church, you can see it's blowing across. It's like a westerly wind, it's awful. So all the lift is on the other side of those trees. So here's little Ronnie, look. So he might figure it out now. If he goes left and behind those trees, there you go. Hopefully, I think he felt that little bit of lift then. There we go. Hopefully he may just go up now, but you don't know, it's entirely up to him. But what I want to try and do is get a sufficient amount of height out of him, and then whatever you do, when I start swinging this thing, don't frantically watch me. It's boring. Watch the falcon. Here he comes. There we go. Puts on some speed, and here comes Rocket Ron. There we go. So as you can see now, I can't even see it, so this could end badly. There he is. So now Ronnie is chasing this lure, and it's just a leather pad. Oh, what you doing? That wing caught up then, and it really messed him up a little bit. I can't see you, sorry. Oh, there it is. So basically, I'm playing pigeon now, and now the Lanner is using... The Lanner falcon has got... I can't see it, sorry. I'm going to put it away. I can't see what I'm doing. So the Lanner falcon is very quick on the turn, far more agile than the peregrine. So what I could see then is that Ronnie was just doing really tight banking turns, and he really can time me up in knots, and he is utilising that sun perfectly. So I try not to... Oh, here we go. It should drop in from there. Good lad, Ronnie. Oh, watch the tree. So basically, as you could imagine, this is what he would do to a pigeon. So once he spots a particular prey item, he's relentless. They've got a tremendous amount of energy, and they'll use pretty much all of it if they have to. But by repeatedly swooping and diving and harassing the prey item, all he needs is one slight mistake, and that's it. They've caught them. But just imagine, he's just sort of cruising around in this show. Imagine if he came in at about 100 miles an hour. Here he comes now, look at the dive. Good lad. See that turn there? Look, that's the Lanner turn. Ooh, nearly had me. So I'll just pop that away, and the next time he ranges off, I'll let him have it. It'll be a surprise for him. So I always try and make it spontaneous, you know, but now he's tired and he's settling into a routine. Can't see him yet again. But you'll see the force he can generate in a strike from his feet. Although he's not a heavy bird, he is still very powerful. Ooh. There we go. How about a round of applause for Ronnie? And despite all of that flying he's just done, he's not even remotely tired. I think I'm quite tired, however. And he's done all the work. So what I did there, a bit clumsy with that, of course. Ronnie's quite good. Some birds, when you train them to attack and kill the lure, that's all they tend to want to do, and they can get quite possessive over it. But Ronnie's so nice, you know, although he hunted it down with the vigour that he would hunt a prey item in the wild, he just comes straight to me for a reward. I wouldn't ever try and get it off him for nothing at all. That would be quite horrible. But now he's having his few pieces of food. I'm just going to pop him back into the box so he can enjoy his meal at his leisure. But he doesn't really enjoy eating on the end of my hand because he thinks I want to share it, which I, of course, don't. Well done, Ronnie. There you go. You can sit there. Good boy. Well done, Ronald. So the third bird for the show will be coming in from over there. We'll fly a hawk. Here he is. Right on cue. And this is Charlie. And Charlie is our 4-year-old Harris's hawk. So again, this is a species that you will not find living wild here in the UK. Harris's hawks, they actually come from parts of Central and Southern America. But one thing I want to make you all aware of, and I think you should always be aware of it, is that none of our birds even understand what the wild is. They're all bred in captivity. So Ronnie, who you just met, Penny, who you just met, and including Charlie here, they're all captive bred. Charlie, well, whether you feel sorry for him or not, he actually hatched out of his egg in a very exotic place called Dudley. He is from Dudley. I am not joking at all. So yes, they're all captive bred. Now back to what I mentioned with the Lanner falcon not so long ago, falconry. This is the historical connection between birds of prey and indeed Warwick Castle. Now we're not doing falconry at the moment. The true definition of falconry is where you would train a bird, like Charlie and Ronnie as we have done. You would just go a stage further. So once the bird is fit and flying well, then you would start to train them to chase and catch wild quarry. So hunting with a bird of prey is falconry. So we just do educational shows here each and every day of the year for the lovely people that visit Warwick Castle. So we don't want to terrorise the local wildlife. Myself and John, however, we are practicing falconers. I have a falcon called Gordon. John doesn't actually have a bird as of yet, but I'm sure he might be getting one for the season ahead. We go out and we hunt with our birds, but it's the oldest field sport. Falconry dates back the best part of about 4,000 years. That's how long people have been using birds of prey as hunting companions. And as I mentioned earlier, you were given a bird of prey according to your social status. There's like a hierarchy sort of system. The more important you were as a person, the better the bird was that you were given. So I'll give you a few examples. It's all in the book of St. Albans, should you wish to go and read it. But if you're the king or the emperor, you're right at the very top. You're going to get a golden eagle, or the largest of all the world's falcons, called a gerfalcon. Knights were given peregrine, princes were given peregrine falcons. Knights were given a Saker falcon, which is a big, powerful bird, and it comes from the Middle East, the desert regions of the world. Squires were given Lanner falcons, the bird you met not so long ago. And ladies, they weren't forgotten about either. Ladies were given a lovely species of falcon called a merlin. Tiny little thing, known as the lady's hawk. They're tiny to look at. They're about the size of a blackbird that you would have at home in your back garden, but they're fearsome little hunters. And ladies mainly hunted small birds with their merlins. The typical quarry was the skylark. But even if you're a poorer person, you're still going to get a bird, and it is fairly obvious. I have to say, I can tell by the way most of you guys are dressed, you would all be peasants. You haven't got tights and pointy shoes like me. If you were a knave, you were given a kestrel, and if you were a baron, you had a buzzard. And the reason they were given to the poorer people is because it's a poorer hunting bird. You're not going to catch much with a kestrel or a buzzard, certainly nothing you'd want to eat anyway. So the best thing to do with a buzzard, roast it on a fire and eat it yourself. Because at least you're going to get a decent meal, aren't you, out of it, you know? They weigh about 2.5 pounds as a big buzzard. But yeah, genuinely, that's why they were given to the poorer people. But we use the Harris's hawk, however, we are sort of cheating with this bird because they come from the Americas. They weren't even at Warwick Castle years and years ago. They've only been in the UK since the early 1970s. So one of the more recent species of birds of prey we've been able to acquire. And we use them just because they're a very steady, reliable bird. Other birds, such as goshawks, who were given to a yeoman, they're quite unsteady birds, you know, quite temperamental and very nervous. And the last thing a goshawk might want is 300 or 400 people, 300 or 400 people staring at it. And they're also fearsome hunters, very, very powerful. Can we just see if he'll come up to you there, John? Because I'm not going to ever feed you for flying 20 feet. There we go. So we'll get him over there, and then I can buzz these people towards the end. But the Harris hawk are amazing birds. Don't get me wrong, you know, I could train Charlie to hunt. He's just so much more clever, and he's just like, why would I want to chase a pigeon when David's got a bag full of food for me? But I could train him to be a very efficient hunter. You can tell he'll be a good hunter by the size of his feet. His feet, they just look like they're too big for his actual body. So I could easily train him to catch me rabbits, pheasants, ducks, pigeons and partridges. All those sorts of things are well within the Harris's hawk's capabilities. But out in the wild, they're quite unique, Harris's hawks, because it's the only bird of prey that lives in a large social group. So their nickname is the wolf of the sky. So like a pack of wolves, you have a pack of Harris's hawks. Now Charlie is a boy. He's considerably smaller than a female. He doesn't want a girlfriend. We did ask him. He said he'd rather concentrate on work. But if you saw a female Harris's hawk, she would be nearly double his size. So when they go hunting, the females are like the muscle. They're so big and powerful. And Charlie, being small and swift and agile, he'll go into like rocky outcrops and dense shrubbery, because he'll know where the rabbits are, or the jackrabbits, which is much bigger, like our native brown hare, and Charlie will go in on foot, and he'll just chase them out the other side, and that's when the rest of the pack can all play their part. Just like wolves, you know, if they're chasing a bison or an elk, you know, they'll work together as a team, and it makes them one of the most efficient predators on the planet because of the pack mentality. Really is quite astonishing as to just how clever these amazing hawks really are. So why don't you give them a big old round of applause? That was its final piece of food. And now Charlie's going to vacate the arena, and he's going to go to John, and then John's going to pop him in, and we'll fly the final bird for the show. All these birds have their own individual enclosures, and because it's a nice day, the first thing they'll do is have a bath. Always after a meal, they'll have a bath, and we'll pop them out in the sun, and they'll have a lovely afternoon. To finish the show, this isn't really a bird that we would, you know, always, well, we wouldn't like to end the show with him. We'd usually start the show with him, but this one's just so naughty, we have to end the show with him. And his name's William. He was renamed a week ago. He's now called Unpredictable Will. But he's a 5-month-old barn owl. There he is. So he's only a baby, he's fully grown, and he looks like a barn owl, but he's just such a naughty bird. So hence the name. I always duck out of the way of a barn owl. They're not even scariest in the slightest, are they? But yeah, he's honestly, I'll explain more, but basically when we first started flying him in the shows, like a few weeks ago, he was absolutely rubbish. Honestly, he'd come out, he'd do one circle, then he'll just sit in a tree and scream his head off and say, well, can you just climb up here and give me some chicken? I'd rather not have to work for it. But he's a baby. He had no idea as to what was expected from him within, within these birds of prey shows. But do you know what? Over the last few weeks, touch wood, he really has turned out to be an exceptionally very valuable part of the team. I couldn't imagine doing these shows without this owl now. He is absolutely perfect. So we might change his name back to Will shortly. But he, obviously I mentioned what he was earlier on, being a barn owl. Even, they don't need much introduction because pretty much everybody knows of a barn owl, don't they? Especially here in the UK and from various parts of the world where other people come from. It is a very well-known species. And the reason I'm over here, and the reason, William, come on. The reason they're so well known is because it's actually the most widely distributed species of owl. You can actually find them on every continent bar one, and that's the Antarctic. For obvious reasons, it's freezing cold and not the environment for a barn owl to be living in. They just will not simply be able to survive. But wherever you go in the world, you will be able to find the barn owl. There's a few variations as well. So if you were to head over to the good old US of A, you'll find a barn owl. This is nothing personal, but if you see the American barn owl, it's massive, it's huge, it's twice the size of this, but obviously it's American, it's got to be. And like I say, I don't mean it in a bad way. Big place, big country, big barn owls. If you head up to Australia, you'll find a barn owl. What are you doing? If you head up to all over Africa, you'll find the barn owl. But let's be honest, William here is just a standard European barn owl. They're the best, aren't they?
Yeah.
Aren't they?
Yeah.
Oh, gosh. Never mind, I love you, William. I think you're the best.
Brilliant.
So when you've watched him fly around for the last few minutes, this is sort of the style of flight we try and achieve with the barn owl. It's taken us quite a while to get in there. Most of them pick it up quite quickly because it is the type of owl that advances very quickly in terms of flying skill. They just figure it out. But when he goes off in these big circles, this is a very natural style of flight for a barn owl because they are a bird of the open countryside. You can generally tell this by the shape of him. He's got long, slender wings, a relatively short tail, which doesn't hamper his agility. He can still twist and turn. But you see the trees behind you all, that's the territory of another British owl called a tawny owl. Now, they're a true woodland species. They've got short but very broad wings and a huge tail, so they can twist and turn through the confines of a wood with ease. Whereas the fields you see over the River Avon, that's the territory of a barn owl. Perhaps not short grass, but long grass, rough ground, moorland, heathland, where there's generally going to be a high population of rodents, which is their favourite prey. So they're very busy little birds. A little while later on, I'll introduce you to an owl that's completely the opposite. He can sit down for 6 or 8 hours at a time, potentially waiting for food to come to him. Whereas William, despite the fact that he is a sizable bird to look at, with a wingspan of about 2 feet across, stands an impressive 10 inches tall, he only weighs 9.5 ounces. Look, he's on my finger. Tiny little barn owl. So this is probably one of the main reasons for its success in flight. They can just float around gracefully. They usually always like to fly into the wind. Then they have full control. And what they have is this quartering style of flight. And they always generally try and search out their prey items on the wing. Sometimes you may see one if you're lucky and you see them in the wild. Watch the crowd. Sometimes, you will see them sat on an exposed limb of a dead tree or a fence post. And if he gets lucky and something runs by, he'll just jump on them. The easiest meal he could ever get. But watching a wild barn owl hunt, there's no finer sight. They're beautiful. And where we live up in North Yorkshire, there's quite a lot of them. So there's a lot of natural environment for them, you see, like old derelict barns and buildings. It's the perfect place for them to indeed thrive and survive. And a few times I've seen them going about their business of hunting field voles. And they go over a patch of ground and they meticulously search it side to side. And how an owl like William often searches for a prey item, you know, you may just think he'll try and find them with his eyes, but it's actually his ears. All owls have got exceptionally good hearing, and it's thanks to this large ring that he has around his face. You won't forget it, because it's a love heart shape. Actually, Valentine's Day's coming up soon. Told you, lads, told you. No excuses now. So this is called his facial disc. So as you look at the owl head on, his right ear is up there, and his left ear is down the bottom. The right ear points up, and the left ear points down and away at a slight angle. Also, the right ear is slightly further forward than the left ear. This is called asymmetrical. And what it enables him to do is he can literally hear the most minute sounds. Sorry about that. He can hear the most minute sounds that his prey items will make. Even under snow, he can hear the little rodents scurrying around trying to find food, and he can track them down. Even in grass 2 feet long, he'll literally be able to pinpoint these little rodents, track them down, and make them his meal. And this is one of the main reasons that owls fly so very silently. If you can hear a barn owl's wing beat, your hearing must be just as good as his. But even when he flies right over your heads, which he'll probably do in this general area now, very rarely will you ever hear the wing beats of a barn owl. Their feathers are incredibly soft, but there are some drawbacks to this. Is that they're like sponges. So when there's a heavy downpour, barn owls struggle to get around. And on seriously windy days, well, he just gets blown all over the place because he only weighs 9.5 or 10 ounces. But amazing little bird. I love him dearly. This is probably one of the best shows he's actually done in a long while. Buzzing the crowd. I think he just thinks you've all got chicken in your pockets, you know. But that was his final piece of food for the show. So why don't you give him a big old round of applause? And I hope you've enjoyed meeting the birds in this afternoon's presentation. And at 2:30 later on, we're going to fly 3 different birds for you. So hopefully we'll see you then. So yeah, please come along, because the next 3 birds are equally just as impressive. But thanks for watching, and bye-bye for now.